regardless of
Anatomically
as a
female,
woman.
it wouldn't be safe for me to use men's loos. And the current situation, one of the reasons I've had to leave is, if I was out with work colleagues, and believe it or not, judges do go down the pub, sometimes, or wherever, I'd be expected to leave my female colleagues and go to the men's loos in a London pub with female anatomy. That's not safe.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to talk about the UK's Supreme Court ruling that clarified that a woman is based on biology, that a woman, biologically speaking, is one that is female. Therefore, women are entitled to women-only spaces. A man waving around a piece of paper that says he's a woman isn't a woman, legally speaking, as well as factually speaking and biologically speaking. And that entitles us as women to our own bathrooms, to our own changing rooms, to our own facilities. And if we say that this is a woman-only space, a man can't come along and infringe upon that space. Legally speaking, the law in the UK recognises that. So, with that clarification, because that's always been the law, by the way, why is it that we're now seeing certain institutions, certain authorities ignore that Supreme Court ruling, that Supreme Court clarification? So while we're seeing changes when it comes to sporting bodies, which is a great step in the right direction, where they're banning men from the women's category, we're seeing other institutions, such as universities in the UK, ignore the Supreme Court ruling and allow men to infiltrate women's spaces.
I mean, you were there at the Supreme Court, this amazing decision that was basically, the fact that we needed a Supreme Court to tell us what difference between the sexes was mind-blowing. But lots of people were saying at the time, that's it, it's all done and dusted, move on. We've still got sporting bodies who haven't got to grips with this. We've got government organisations. We've got numerous charities, the arts, and universities. Some young women being told they're going to have to share facilities, probably in single-sex dorms and the like, with men who claim that they are women, but because that still counts as being a woman according to them. That is a flagrant ignorance of the law, is it not?
I think it's deliberate. I was sitting in court, as you say, in April when that judgment was handed down, and a very experienced lawyer friend turned to me afterwards and said, there's nothing left for us to do. Well, it turns out that a lot of people are pretending that they don't know what the court said, which, as you say, is very clear. It said that in the Equality Act, male and female mean biology, not paperwork or identity. And the only basis for offering single-sex spaces is on the basis of the Equality Act, because otherwise it's sex discrimination. You have to be permitted to do sex discrimination. So I've explained that to you in, 15 seconds? Yeah. Everybody who asks a lawyer or reads it knows what's happening, but they're all thumb-sucking, stroking their chins.
We're waiting for the Equality and Human Rights Commission to issue some definitive guidance, which they'll ignore as well.
Exactly. Why would you pay attention to the HRC if you're not paying attention to the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court, when it said that was the law the second it said it. Imagine if this was a tax judgment. The next day your accountant will be on to you saying, oh, we had misinterpreted the law. Act quickly or you're going to be charged.
Yeah, and indeed the key point the Supreme Court made was not that they had changed the law. That was what the law had always been. And it was people... they weren't misinterpreting the law. They were willfully disregarding the law, and they're still doing so now.
So they're deliberately going against the law because they want to continue bowing to gender ideology at the expense of women and girls. You sign up to a university, you apply, you get in, you sign up to live on campus, and you're put in a situation, once again, where you may very well have to share facilities with men. Why? What justification do they have? Now, I believe things will only change once women seek legal action and fight this. Seek legal action against sporting bodies, against universities, public institutions that are allowing this in our healthcare system. It only changes once we have women seeking legal action. I guess they think that women are not going to bother to do that. They're just going to sit back and allow it and go along with it. They're banking on that. That could be the only explanation as to why they continue to ignore the law. It's like here in the US, where they ignore federal law in some of these states. They ignore the executive order. They ignore Title IX. It's going on here as well. This is absolute insanity. Only when they're held accountable will they be forced to change. Thank goodness for Women Scotland, Sex Matters. Because these organisations, they back women who want to seek legal action, or they give them information and, you know, give them some guidance in how they can pursue that legal action. Thank goodness. Only then, when they're held liable in court, will they make the necessary changes. Many of them are just doing what they want. We heard about it even with the police when it came to things like strip searching. They were still saying, well, we're waiting for clarification. As it stands right now, a man can be a woman and can strip search a female suspect.
Could these universities just simply slap on these are unisex facilities sign? Just literally, if you put on a male and female sign, then they're not flouting the law.
Well, it depends. For their workers, their employees, they can't, no, because they have to give decent facilities to workers, and that in most situations will mean actual single sex.
So women, in particular, women have the right to not have to get changed or go to the toilet with men.
That's right. That's right. The only way you can get around having female and male toilets is if all your facilities, or lots of your facilities, are just single user. Yeah. Students, it's less clear. We'd have to make an argument about indirect discrimination, and I think that would work, but that would mean going back to court. I mean, if they went all gender neutral everywhere. So we are taking some court cases. We have threatened legal action against the Scottish Government.
So yes, legally speaking, when it comes to your employees, you can't go the unisex route, which many of these people tout as a solution, and it's far from a solution. You can't take away women's options to single-sex spaces and men's options. That is not the answer. And it appears that legal action is the only way to deter them from going down that route, making everything unisex. Completely unnecessary, because we're all either male or female. So how about we stick to that? So another person who has vowed to challenge the decision of the Supreme Court ruling is the UK's first transgender judge. So this is a man who identifies as a woman who happens to be a judge. Well, now apparently this person has retired, but has only begun the fight to infringe upon women's spaces. And what I find interesting is when this person speaks, listen to how he speaks about safety, his safety. And apparently, in order to ensure his safety, we need to take away safety and security and privacy from women. That's justified as long as his safety is secured.
A majority of people, 63%, back the Supreme Court decision in its recent ruling on biological sex, and that the law on women's rights, they say, is now clear.
But Britain's first transgender judge, Dr. Victoria McCloud, disagrees. She's suing the government, claiming the ruling puts trans people with gender recognition certificates in legal limbo. She's decided to leave the UK as a result of the ruling, and obviously joins us in the studio now. Very good morning to you. So you can see from this survey, majority people think this is finally made things clear. A woman is a biological woman. You, as a judge, disagree.
Well, I do, and I don't know any lawyers who find the judgment clear at all.
I think lawyers are well aware of the differences between males and females. They love to act like this is a complicated issue. No, it's not. I'm so over the whole, it's complex, and, you know, the law still needs to be clarified, and how are we going to implement this? What? Very, very disingenuous indeed.
The concept of biological sex is something that is not a legal term that's been known before. So the court unfortunately failed to say what they meant, so that doesn't help.
OK, and you're
That's a complete lie. Sex is based on biology. There are two sexes. That's it. Male and female. And we all have rights based on that. Sex-based rights. This is being intellectually dishonest. It's plain dumb when this person knows very well the basic biological facts of whether one is male or female. This person knows, but is trying to convince us that it's some complex issue.
Taking legal action
yes,
now.
I'm going to go to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg.
What's your petition? What are you going to say?
Well, what's happened is that the Supreme Court has departed from a case that was decided in about 2002, which led to the Gender Recognition Act, which is the act that enabled us to re-register our births and to change our legal sex, as the statute says. And the court has gone against that. But they also, unfortunately, failed to hear any trans people and excluded me and others from the court, so that we weren't actually heard making any points.
And what
because you can't change your sex. So legally speaking, your sex cannot change either. You can't change your sex. So how can you be allowed to change your sex legally on your documents? A piece of paper saying that you're a woman, you identify as a woman, doesn't make you a woman. To say that someone can change their birth certificates and all of that, and therefore infringe upon women's spaces on the basis of, a piece of paper, is just wrong. The rights afforded to women are the rights afforded to women who are female, who are biologically speaking are women, not someone who feels like a woman. And we've been hearing from trans people for the longest time. We haven't stopped hearing from trans people. But all you've got is I feel like a woman. Okay, but that doesn't mean that the law has to recognise you as a woman.
What do you say to those behind the legal action, of course, and presumably to those in the survey, who say you may be able to say that you have changed your sex, but you have not changed your biological sex? And therefore, for instance, if you're playing in a football match, there are biological factors that come with being born a man.
Yes, I mean, and in this country for the last 20 years, the law has been that if it's not fair, then a trans person can be excluded. So there's nothing new in this. But it's case by case. I'm 8 stone. I don't have the muscles of a man. Most female footballers would make mincemeat of me. But some people are bigger than others. And I entirely agree that you shouldn't have situations where any woman is in some sense at risk, or which is unfair.
But can you see how that has happened? I mean, we've seen those cases in Scotland.
Cases, yes.
I'm so sick of this. It's not case-by-case basis. It's a policy that, once implemented, literally takes away female-only sports or women's-only categories. It's a policy that, once implemented, takes away women-only spaces. It's never a case-by-case basis because that's not possible. So it's a blanket policy that takes away women-only spaces. And you might get a man who's 4 feet, who is not very good at sports, but then you could also get a man who's 6'4", built like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and is claiming to be a woman and wants to play rugby. You can't pick and choose. And don't tell me that no woman should be endangered while fighting for men to infringe upon women's spaces and for men to infringe upon women's sports, because that's exactly what is going to happen and what has happened. That's why we've had women with broken knees playing football against men who claim to be women. There's no way around that. Once it's allowed, it takes away those spaces from women. So stop lying to people and saying that it's, if a woman's in danger, then it won't be allowed. That's simply not true, because that man has been given permission to be there because of ridiculous, reckless policies. So thankfully, the Supreme Court is saying no. Legally speaking, you cannot be recognised as a woman and therefore infringe upon those spaces, no matter how you feel, no matter what your piece of paper says. And this individual didn't answer the question. You haven't changed your sex. That is scientifically impossible. You haven't changed your sex. I don't care how skinny you've gotten. You're also of a certain age. So you can't compare yourself to these, men. They're in peak physical condition. You can't compare yourself in that situation. It's very disingenuous. It really is.
Criminals then transitioning and saying, I'm a woman, going into a female prison.
I mean, my experience as a judge, I was involved in writing guidelines for judges, and I know that the guidance there is that, if you get some rapist who turns up at court saying, despite having been bob all his life, turns up and says, hello, I'm Julie today, he's probably just lying because bad people lie.
Doesn't matter. Once there's a policy that says that identity means you can go into the women's prison, he can go into the women's prison. And this judge knows that. That's why we have literally had predators who have been convicted of RAPE, been allowed into women's prisons and then gone on to attack female inmates. After being given plenty of examples, this person goes on to say, well, what about my safety as a man who identifies as a woman? He only cares about his safety.
And they're called trans, I think, by people labelling them as trans, and they may call themselves trans, but it doesn't make it true.
Can we talk about the impact on you personally? Because you've left the country, living in Ireland now. If you were still sitting on a case today, for example, and I'm not going to belabor the point about toilets, but it's worth raising. What toilet would you be allowed to use?
Well, I raised concerns about this 2 years ago because internally within the judiciary, because I said I could see this case coming up through the courts. Because I wanted them to have a policy so that there wouldn't be embarrassment if somebody tried to set me up, effectively. And unfortunately, they just didn't create a policy. So the answer is that I don't know.
Well, I mean, I suppose legally you'd have to use the gents, but you, as a woman who regards herself as a woman,
it wouldn't be safe for me to use mental illness. And the current situation, one of the reasons I've had to leave is, if I was out with work colleagues, and believe it or not, judges do go down the pub, sometimes, or wherever, I'd be expected to leave my female colleagues and go to the men's loos in a London pub with female anatomy. That's not safe. And I'm as much at risk of assault or rape as any other woman.
And you're also concerned, aren't you, about the solution which has been offered here and there, that actually trans women should use disabled toilets.
Well, that came up in the interview that I did with Kemi Badenoch.
I feel very strongly about this. Both of my parents suffered from disabilities later in life, and in fact, one of my specialist areas when I was writing for the guidance for judges was disability. And disabled people's spaces are designed for them. I don't think it's right, and nobody asked their permission to take their space.
Do you see what is happening? Do you see how these people think, how these men think? It wouldn't be safe for me because you don't have female anatomy. You have a hole that has been created by a surgeon who was willing to butcher you. That you do not have female anatomy, number one. Objectively speaking, you do not. But it wouldn't be safe for you because you believe you have female anatomy. So what we need to do is take away the women's only spaces so that you could be allowed to enter into those spaces to feel safe. Does that make any kind of sense whatsoever? So this person has admitted exactly why women need their own spaces, but is advocating to infringe upon those spaces, and is also advocating for a policy that would open up their spaces to men. And then this person has the nerve to say disabled people didn't ask or didn't give consent for their space to be infringed upon. So I don't think that's right, that we should just take away their space. But yet, it's completely ignoring the fact that women didn't consent for their space to be infringed upon, for their space to be taken away. We didn't give permission for that. We didn't consent to that, and we do not agree with that. I mean, I have no words. The hypocrisy is astounding. He has other options, but that's not good enough. He only wants to be in the women's spaces. This is a judge playing dumb, being intellectually dishonest, ignoring the questions. You're still a man. You haven't changed your sex. You do not have female anatomy. But by you pursuing this challenging of the Supreme Court ruling, you're failing to acknowledge that what you're pursuing is for women to have their spaces taken away and for them to be forced to share those spaces with men. You're advocating for their spaces to be opened up to men. It doesn't matter whether the man is genuinely, trans or genuinely believes he's a woman. Doesn't matter. Once gender identity overrides biology, any man can use that space, regardless of his motives, regardless of his intentions and what he plans on doing in there. He can use that space. It has been opened up to him. There's no one standing at the door asking him, are you genuinely trans? Are you dressed like a woman? Are you wearing a wig? Have you grown your hair? There's no one standing at that bathroom door asking that. It doesn't have to be said. It means that any man can enter into that bathroom. It means that women don't have their spaces anymore. This judge knows that. He's well aware of that because we've seen years of this going on where women's spaces are opened up. Boys can use the girls' toilets in the schools, in the universities. Men can go into the women's changing rooms. The Darlington nurses had to share with a man who claims to be a woman, but also has a girlfriend who he is planning on having a baby with. Predators, men who have been convicted of RAPE have been allowed into women's prisons to stay in women's prisons in the UK. In Scotland in particular, we've had these horrific cases. Where was the, oh, he's not really trans, where was that? That doesn't come into effect because the policy says that he can be in that women's prison now. That's why we're saying we need our single-sex spaces, and to take that away is discrimination on the basis of sex. And that's what the Supreme Court ruling has also confirmed. So I don't think this person is going to be successful, but I wanted you to see how this first transgender judge in the UK basically believes that his safety is more important than anybody else's safety. He believes that disabled people, their space should be protected. And if you don't fit that category, you have no business using the disabled toilets. Even though those toilets are actually opened up to mothers with babies who need to use the changing mats. You know, those facilities are opened up to other groups as well. But he's saying no, they didn't give permission for their space to be used by other groups. They didn't consent to that, while ignoring the fact that women didn't consent for their spaces to be opened up and to be used by other groups. So what this comes down to is plain old-fashioned misogyny. He doesn't care about the wishes of women. He doesn't even care that the majority of people in the UK agree with the Supreme Court ruling and are all for it.
Just what they're identifying is there's still men. The claim we often hear, certainly on social media, is, but we can't be in the toilets with the men because we might be harassed or beaten or sexually assaulted, so we need to be in with the women. But Helen, correct me, was there a reason why women didn't want men in the toilets with them in the first place? Wasn't that the exact same reason?
I always think that when they open their mouths, they tell on themselves, you know. They're acknowledging the reason why we have single-sex spaces, which is that men can be dangerous to women.
Not all men, but enough men that it's a serious concern. Yeah.
So, yeah, they tell on themselves. And this person basically explained exactly why women want their own spaces, why women don't want their spaces opened up to men. Real women with real female anatomy don't want our spaces opened up to men. This person basically explained that very well. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.